Welcome to the Ayn Rand Fan Club. I'm Scott Schiff along with William Swig. William, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good.
So today we have an excellent guest returning for his second time on the podcast, Michael Newberry. He doesn't need much introduction, I don't think, because he's very famous within the Objectivist movement for being a great artist. He does amazing paintings. He does them with the themes of like Greek mythology, which I find amazing. And he has a new painting called Metamorphosis, which we will be discussing later. He has actually created 1,200 artworks and has sold over 800. So he's very prominent and very successful artist, and we're glad to have him back. Thank you for coming back, Michael.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
So
it's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't you tell us, I know you came on because you approached us with an idea for discussing independent objectivism or breaking away from official orthodox objectivism. Can you tell us your story and how it relates to that subject?
Well, I've been associated with objectivism for a long time, since the 80s. Going to parties with Peikoff and Schwartz and Benzwinger and David Kelly, and knowing the Jefferson School. I had an art exhibition there, so I knew Edith Packer and George Reisman.
That's old school.
Oh yeah, so I've been around, but it's always been just for that week, where the rest of the time I was living my own life and doing my own thing. And then Jennifer Grossman asked me to be an artist in residence with the Atlas Society, and I thought that was an honor, a nice thing to do. And I like David Kelly very much, and so I joined that. So in one way, my involvement with objectivism has never been, official objectivism has never been too time consuming. It never had an influence on my timing as being an artist. So I was just on my own anyway, being an artist. But I did find it funny that, yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's implicit in objectivism, to still focus primarily on your productive work and your values.
Sure. So that's why I thought, oh, that's fine. It's not harming me in any way. And I'm not investing a lot of my efforts into promoting them or promoting the organization. And then
Did they invest a lot of time in promoting you? Did you get a lot of benefit from your interaction with ARI and TOS?
Well, that's the funny thing, is that I was surprised by the lack of not promotion of such, but the lack of a really vibrant, rich support of my work, because I thought, well, I'm the real deal. I'm an artist, and I have my studio, and I make art, and I understand things, and know, the Romantic Manifesto forwards and backwards, and but it's that I've always been that independent type of person, so that even though we may be in agreement in a general sense, like Ayn Rand's a great philosopher. Well, I think she's a great writer. But it's we dig deeper into what are you doing in your life, and how do you think, and your own world, your own psychology, your own philosophy of life. I found that a lot of objectivists were kind of parroting the ideas, and you guys both will know that pretty well.
Sure.
That you're independent thinkers, and you think your own way, and so you don't mind the challenge of thinking, but you're kind of surprised when people just give you back what Ayn Rand would say.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are benefits to, being around those with shared values. I mean, which is why individualists would even consider a movement. It's when these people all start to want you to have the same judgment, even on things like works of art, that it gets shades of tribalism.
Right. Right.
Can you, maybe without naming names or anything, but do you have a sense of your buyers? Like, do they mostly come from the official wing or the reformer wing of objectivism? Who do you appeal to?
Most of my buyers are liberals who've never read Ayn Rand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I need to redo my intro then, because I said
Usually, for my major works, the people that buy them are usually at the height of their, or they're at the crescendo of their careers. So people like in their 40s, late 40s, early 50s, and they're thriving and they're pushing and they're exhausted and they're working 16 hours a day. Those tend to be the people that will buy a major work of mine.
So
So
do you mean like the classical liberals, like a Dave Rubin or someone like that? Someone
business
who knows
business
Ayn Rand.
people,
What's that? Sorry.
business people.
Okay, business.
Yeah, not necessarily intellectual, but smart.
Now,
And then
did they come to you just through the art community? Like they just discovered you because there's this figurative art community, or do you get a lot of people from the objectivist community or the Ayn Rand people who know about Ayn Rand? Do they come to you?
well, like a guy sent me a query the other day, and he's a friend of a young woman who was one of the young people being invited to the Atlas Society events. So here's this young woman who's part of the Atlas Society as far as being a young person and interested in it. And then she had a friend who apparently got introduced to me online. And then he sent a query for an artwork. So that's kind of typical. Or, I'll go to the coffee shop where I live in town. And when you tell people you're an artist, and they can Google you, that starts creating its own energy that leads, sometimes to selling a painting or friendships or whatever. And, I've been doing this now. I started painting as an 11-year-old and I started selling at 17. So it seems that it's kind of natural. You meet people and then you give them your card and it flows from there.
Sure.
But from the organized thing, my interrelationship with Objectivist has been, well, in truth, when I've gone to the conferences, I always prepared myself that I would like 2% of the people. So I didn't go in with really high hopes and then be disappointed. What would happen is I'd meet some incredibly wonderful, I'd meet some great people. And the ones that were not my kind of person just washed off
Right.
of me. So that 2% was a really handy thing. It turns out it's more like 20, but I would always
Manage
go in with a very
expectations.
modest. Yes, yeah. But I do this. But I do the same for myself as an artist. So I come up with an epic idea, and then I manage my expectations really well. I give myself like 2 years to make a painting, say, well, it might, I don't know. I'm doing something I haven't done before. I don't know how difficult it will be. But I'm very generous to myself and very kind as far as managing the expectation. And
That's good.
I
What,
find
how
that
do
that
you,
makes it easier to flow.
I mean, do you ever have times where you go through a type of painter's block, or where you just need time to step away from it for a little while, or when you're talking about a 2-year
Uh,
time
I-
horizon?
the only time I get a kind of block is when I'm working on a major work and I don't know what to do next. But that day I'll get out pastels, I will do drawings, um, I will do something, or I will experiment. Like I'm not sure where to go next, so then I might do some studies, experimenting what those possibilities are. And I've never had writer's block that way. So I am always creating uh, at the drop of a hat. And I think that's the managing the expectation as well. It's like, oh, this is too difficult for me right now, but I can draw an egg, or I can draw a chair, or I can study something with light and color, and I'll just do that
Sure.
and
It
I'll enjoy it.
sounds like you're very creative. You also are very productive. And maybe those are traits that are required for an objectivist to break away from the orgs and become their own objectivist or their own Randian with their own ideas. Um, I'm struggling with the question of how do we create more breakaway objectivists who think on their own and come up with new ideas and actually self-examine and criticize, maybe learn something and change for the better. Because I meet these objectivists and I talk to them online who, like you say, don't have their own ideas and they just parrot Ayn Rand. And when you start noticing a problem with some of the applications or ideas that Rand had, and they don't really fit with reality the way you see it, and you start engaging with these people, they don't have anything to offer. And they start calling you names usually because you're the heretic now. So like art is a very independent medium, I guess, or creation, because you're sitting there in your studio and you have to think for yourself how to solve this problem and how to get this painting done.
Right.
And,
Well,
and then
let me interject real quickly there. It's independent whether you want it to be or not. So you can be an Ayn Rand fan, or you can be an Aristotle fan, or a Christian, or whatever. But when you start making the artwork, it's going to start expressing you, whether you want it to or not.
yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing as like social painting, like where I don't know how that would work. I guess you form a team and everyone discusses it, and it would be kind of more like a movie or something, right?
They do that for children. They do that for children, where they all work on a mural. Like you've got this corner and you've got this square foot. And,
but if you're a serious painter, you sit in a studio alone thinking and chewing it and
right.
getting it done.
Going back to what I've noticed with people in general, but a lot with objectivists, including like Peikoff talking about knowledge. It seems to me, but that's because I'm a painter, but it seems to me that it's divorced from the creation, from what you're making. And to me, that's the proof in the pudding, is not what you say, what you do, what you create.
Right.
So it's nice to have well-organized thoughts, and it's nice to, understand philosophical lingo and all that stuff. But what are you doing with it? What are you doing in real life? And what are you doing, or even as a hobby, or your project like the Ayn Rand fan club? That's work. The proof
Right.
is in the pudding that it's a real thing that you're doing. It's not just your ideas, kind of, that if you have good ideas, that somehow you're being an objectivist.
Absolutely. That's what we talked about with rationalism. And, it's great to just have all these fancy ideas, but at some point, if you're not putting them into action, they're just words.
Exactly. So that's where I find that that's kind of what separates the men from the boys.
Yeah, they say talk is cheap, and I think if you're not actually out there doing something, you're just ranting into the cosmos, and
Right.
there's nobody's really gonna do anything with that if you're just ranting. You
Right.
need to actually put a plan of action in their head and then motivate them and get them to do something. And that's what I struggle with is, I struggle with it just for myself. How do I motivate myself to do this? What am I doing? How do I get it done? So I try to be productive like you in other ways. Like I do a lot of trail work, so I'm getting things done in the mountains. But let's go back to your painting. Do you think there's anything about your process that can be applied to, other actions or other hobbies or other, careers that people can apply so that they can get things done and be creative and make a difference in this world?
Wow. Well, one of them I already mentioned, kind of being kind and having managed expectations. That's huge because it allows you to make, like,
Yeah. So that
um,
allows you to get contacts and make friends and everything.
well, I meant like in making art is people want to make a masterpiece and then they fail and then they give up. And I don't have that attitude. Mine is like, oh, what do I want to explore? Oh, it might turn into a total disaster, but I'm going to try it.
Oh, being kind to yourself.
Very
Don't.
kind,
Right.
extremely kind, like the kindest person you know to
Yeah, yeah.
yourself, helps you manage what you're after. And if you're trying to do something that's never been done before, or if you're trying to think on your own about things that you don't know yet, it's hard work. It's not easy. And if you haven't managed that, it maybe take 100 hours instead of 2 to figure out.
Right.
Like maybe it's a college course that you have to like really dive in. And but then like when I wrote the book Evolution Through Art, I didn't know how to do Microsoft Word. And the learning curve on that is horrible. I was almost crying. Press one button and it would destroy everything.
But
And
see, I think you're bringing up an important point, a willingness to experiment and try and fail. And that goes back to the rationalism because they so want everything to be perfect in their ideas that it stops them from taking that imperfect step into something that, may not be that ideal.
and that's with people that make things or do things or do your podcast is there's a lot of experience that goes into the final product. So people only see maybe this hour that we're talking, but what went into it was a tremendous amount of research and work and past experience and all this other stuff. Um, there's a friend of mine on Facebook, Sunny, uh, and she's a grandmother now, and she's a music teacher, but she used to perform. And one of the things she was in the chorus of a recording I have of Beethoven's Ninth with Leontine Price. So she was one of the voices in the chorus.
Okay.
But she had like a birthday video or some kind of improvised video in her kitchen with her husband. And I don't know who was, maybe it was a daughter or a grandkid was filming it, but she started to sing in the kitchen at the kitchen table. But the way she moved was like a Broadway actress. She moved so fluidly and well through space. It was amazing. And once I saw that video, I knew that she had the experience and the goods. So in the video, I could see that she had all these tools.
Right.
Where if she talked about it, like, just talking about teaching or something, or talking about that she studied music. But when I saw her perform, even in this very casual situation, I realized, oh my gosh, she's really talented. This is amazing. And so for
Yeah.
me, that stands for a lifetime. Just seeing a little bit of proof in the pudding tells me that this is an authentic, real person on a very deep, meaningful level.
I think that goes directly into, why we have such adoration for certain artists that just have made us feel something or related to us on just such a deep level. It's part of Rand's secret sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And why she still has influence all these years later.
Well, she's a genius writer, fiction writer. I prefer her fiction over her philosophy, because of when she writes her fiction, the detailing is extraordinary, and how she pulls the reader into her universe. The skill and the nuance and the style and the ability to pull them into her world is amazing. And when you read a philosopher like Stephen Hicks or Aristotle or even Kant, they take an extraordinary amount of time to unfold an idea. And Rand, in her fiction, she's not going to start telling you how it is. She's going to pull you into the discussion and the environment and the time and the atmosphere, what's going on at that moment. She pulls, it's very artistic, but it's a lot of work.
Strikes me as a high respect for reality, because if you're creating a different reality, like a fictional world, and you have a respect for reality itself, you're going to have respect for this new world that you're building, and you're going to want to make it detailed and real, and so someone can see it in their mind. And that reminds me of your painting, is that you say you take 2 years and you struggle over every little detail, and so you have this respect as well for like creating this scene that you want to be as perfect as possible.
Right. The relationship in the art, well, in truth, I don't struggle for every detail. I actually have huge moments of flow where everything is just magical. And then I run it, and then I run into a problem, and then it's like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. But once I do a game plan, then it's kind of like you just flow, you just go, and you can. It's a lot like making exquisite love. You can feel the energy when you make a move, then your partner makes a move. It's a dance, and it's fluid. And when it's disrupted, you might have to take a break and recoup and talk.
And then when you
argue, take a break.
And it's much better afterward.
But so it's very similar like that. So when it's working exquisitely, you're going like, oh my gosh, I'm in heaven. This is amazing. And it's going to be like this forever. and then you run into some new issue or some old psychological thing that you have to work your way through. So I find that painting is very similar to that.
Maybe this would be a good time to talk about your new painting, Metamorphosis.
There we go.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in the background there.
Yeah, that's her. Well, the model is Georgie Leahy, and
Okay.
She's posed in about 6 of my paintings. I really like working with her. She's British, but she lives in Hollywood, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful woman, inside and out. And her a couple of years ago, her agent died, and she called me up and said, I really need to do a meaningful project. Can I come and pose for you? And so we did a project. The unbearable lightness of being. It's a woman reclining back among these billowing white duvet. It's like clouds.
Okay.
It's in this Stephen Hicks collection.
Nice. Well, so what inspired this one?
Oh, well, I've been doing, the last time we talked, I was embarking on my space series.
Right.
Yeah, and so I've made 7 paintings dealing with space and transparency, and they're metaphorical, or they're, kind of like allegories, like those myths where Apollo is going across the sky in his chariot. But mine aren't based on anything in particular, but they're these ideal like gods and goddesses in space. And one of the techniques I'm using is a lot of transparency in the shadow. So you actually, in their shadowed area, you actually see straight through them. And the symbolism behind that is I've kind of really been pissed off at the CIA for its involvement in the art culture from the late 1940s. They've been funding postmodern art, abstract expressionism, and putting all the weight behind the United States, kind of serving as the official cultural wing of the United States, the CIA.
Now, I've not seen that charge. Do you have a reference, or?
Yeah.
And we can post it after the show if you want to send it.
But it's Francis Saunders' book, The CIA and the Cultural War.
Okay.
And I might have had the title a little bit wrong. It's a long title with a subtitle to it, but CIA, Cultural War, Arts and Letters. And she unpacks all those details, how they laundered money through, 4 or 5 foundations. And that's really pissed me off. And it's all covert and it's all BS. And they did a lot to set humanity back from flourishing. And my take is they did it on purpose, or some manipulator within them was doing it on purpose. But the transparency idea that the humans being transparent in who you really are is a very healthy and vital thing. And then I used light to make them 3-dimensional. So their shadows are transparent, and the light is what defines their person. So philosophically, using my visual tools, I really like that messaging. And then scientifically, when we are looking at a high contrasted like if you're looking at a bright lit window from the outside and it's dark on the inside, if you put your finger across the dark plane and you put your finger across the light area, so you divide it, and you squint looking through your finger, there'll be a line that comes down dividing your finger, and it's lighter on the light side and your finger is darker on the dark side with a line going right through it. So it's showing that the transparent element of when your finger is in darkness or in shadow, what's behind it will be transparent. It will come through your finger. So it's an optical phenomenon that's real. So I took that knowledge, then I took the philosophical knowledge and my idea about transparency and light being the defining characteristic of who you are, and I just put them all together, and that made this series.
Wow, I didn't even think about that optical illusion, but I'm holding my finger up now and I'm seeing it. I can see my TV through my finger.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let me tell you what I got out of the painting, because it didn't even occur to me about this optical illusion thing. But the title you gave it, the metamorphosis, that reminded me, of course, of the Greek stories, and so I started thinking about change, and I wanted to talk about this painting in particular because it reminds me of our topic that we were discussing before. Breaking away, changing yourself from being in the official, attached to the official movement, and becoming an independent objectivist and changing your ideas, things like that. So you're kind of like going through a metamorphosis yourself when you're coming up with new ideas and applying them to Rand's philosophy or integrating Rand's philosophy with your ideas. And so with this painting, it seems to me that she's springing forth from the cosmos, kind of like Aphrodite springing forth from the sea. Was there any of that intention in your painting? Were you trying to reference the idea of metamorphosis in Ovid or the Greek myths?
Those influences are kind of embedded in me. I lived in Greece for 8 years and I liked the myths when I was a kid. And I've done several. I've done a few Venuses paintings where the idea is that you come out perfect, fully formed. Like she arrived from the sea. The legend is she arrived from the sea. Perfect.
She's also the goddess of beauty, and your model is very beautiful, and clearly she's intended to express some sort of beautiful thing rising forth.
Right. So that's part of my character. So it wasn't an idea that I said, okay, I want to do this idea specifically, but when I saw the vision of it, I went, oh yeah, click, 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 that will work great. And then there's also the other element that in doing a beautiful person at the prime of their life, a lot of the woke, you sent some article about the woke artists and woke museums and woke institutions, is a lot of them think that you can make an ugly old person be sexy and beautiful or be like a goddess. And it just doesn't work. And I think what happens is the viewer doesn't identify with that. They don't see themselves that way. So like I remember my mom talking a decade ago when she was 80. She said she doesn't feel old. She doesn't feel like an old person. She feels like who she was at 35.
Sure. We all feel it.
Yeah, but so in how she feels as a thinking person and feeling person, when she sees for example, my painting of this woman who's a goddess, my mother will go like, oh, that's like me. But so she's not seeing herself as an old person inside herself. So I think that that's something that is an important thing in art, is if you're bringing out someone's best, if you're trying to talk to their best, or you're talking to their self-identity, or their the best of them, the physicality has to be the best. So, like, for example, there was an objectivist woman who wrote a story about a dwarf as a hero.
Okay.
I don't know.
From the 80s, I think.
Okay.
But it just didn't work, because you need a James Bond to be a James Bond. You just can't, it's a nice idea to say, well, I want, a dwarf can feel heroic too, but physically, well, there's also, have you ever seen the movie Living in Oblivion? It's a fine art film called Living in Oblivion. Well, it has a dwarf as one of the characters, and the dwarf goes, I don't even dream about being a dwarf. I don't see myself that way, because the director wanted to have a really strange dream sequence with the dwarf. And the dwarf was bemoaning that that's not the way it is. It doesn't work that way. So
yeah, I think there's a good point in that a lot of what we see as woke is a type of pandering that people don't even necessarily want.
Right.
Well, I guess it depends on like, what is the purpose of art? It gets down to that question. And so Ayn Rand, was very much about creating the ideal man. So her art was a representation of the good, the exceptional, the perfect even. And if that's not your goal, if the purpose of art is just to vomit onto a canvas and express your soul, if your soul is disgusting, then your art is going to be disgusting. So, but if you change your orientation, and your purpose of art is not to just vomit up your soul at the moment, but to think and come up with some principle of what's good and what's ideal, then that totally radicalizes your art. It changes you. It creates this metamorphosis, and you want to create something perfect.
On a experienced level that I have, is, let's say I'm working on a painting that takes months, and it's 12 hours a day working. You spend 12 hours a day with those themes, whatever your theme is. So if your theme is resolution and aiming for flourishing in some capacity, you're spending your time in that mindset. If you're spending time, if your theme is how hopeless everything is and how petty and small humanity is, or a human being is, psychologically, you're spending 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day in that state of being.
Right.
And so it has its negative consequences. And one of the sad things with psychology is they do this art therapy where all these people are doing crazy, bloody messes, characters being hung by a tree and blood everywhere and all that stuff. And they're spending, they're supporting and recreating the same mood over and over and over and over again.
Right. It's like an obsession, an addiction.
Yes, or pathology. Yeah. So it's a sickness. And I think the the psychologist might think that it helps them, give them information, but it doesn't help the patient at all. The patient would be much better off imagining what it would be like to be free, imagining what it would be like to be in love, imagining what it would be like to be healthy, and spending time with that. And before they know it, they start becoming what they're creating.
Maybe there's value in venting a little bit, of just getting it out there, and then hopefully the art itself becoming better over time as they start healing.
That's the concept, but I don't think it works.
Yeah, that's, and that's fair to question, to those parts of this.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about it philosophically, or you guys are dialoguing with people all the time. If you start venting, you need a lot of sympathy from your audience.
I used to work in customer service, and when you're dealing with complaints, sometimes you just had to let them get it out a little bit.
Yeah, but what if you start venting back at them?
Believe me, I've tried that several times too.
Well, I'm a big proponent that there needs to be an adult in the room, and someone who can calm things down and stop the venting. Because if both people are venting, then you're just in an emotional state and nothing gets accomplished, and it usually turns into a bloodbath. So someone needs to step up and say, all right, enough of this. I'm going to take it down a notch. I'm going to inject some facts. Usually it's just a matter of injecting some just hard facts that you can both agree on. And then you can kind of like staunch the venting.
Maybe some venting might have stopped some of the schisms.
Well, you guys are critical. So you come in, but you're not venting. You're actually making critical points about some of the funny things that you see go on in the objectivist world. And I don't see that as venting. I see that as kind of like shining a light.
No, I just mean what those people in art therapy are doing. And I understand, because with your approach, you are working all of this out before you put it on the page. And I think with with them, it's more, it's not meant to be art in the same sense that what you're doing is. And
right, but it works the same way. So it doesn't matter whether it's a child doing a little stick figure with a house in the sunshine, or a patient dealing with it. It works the same kind of way. They're spending time with issues that if they don't resolve it either in themselves or in the art, it just keeps that cycle going of kind of despondency. Years ago, about 8 years ago, I was mentored by a woman, Christine Hunt, and she used to advise CEOs on their leadership skills. She's a local to Idlewild. And I said, can you help me? I have trouble communicating in words and in my promotion and all that stuff. And she worked with me, bartered for artwork. And her main thing was how to become a leader. And I thought, I don't want to be a leader. I just want to be happy with my career. I'm happy with my art, but I want to be also happy with how the career is going around it. And it was really interesting to get mentorship from someone who was accenting the leadership part. And as a leader, you don't get to complain and whine and vent and all that other stuff. You have to be sympathetic and listen carefully and see the problems. And then you have to be careful with your body language. Like you can't snarl at people. When
apparently people don't like eye rolls either.
Yeah, exact eye rolls. Yeah.
Or sarcasm.
And then what the biggest lesson I learned from her was you have to inspire people. So if you want them to come to your show, if you want them to look at your work, you have to introduce it in such a way that hopefully you inspire them to go take a look or to come to your show. But you can't get mad at them for not coming to your show. You can't get mad at them for not being inspired. So the leadership thing is interesting. It's the adult in the room.
Yeah, that theme comes up over and over again. It's, or people, bad for not appreciating Rand, or, even I remember in the last days of Hitler, that Downfall movie. I mean, he's basically saying that if the German people weren't strong enough to stop this, they deserve the death and destruction that's going to follow. So, it can have implications everywhere. I do wanted to, just picking up off of what you said, and art psy-op, you kind of touched on the last time you were on the show, and I'm just, within all of this, we're talking about art therapy even, but I mean, what qualifies as a psy-op? I mean, is it any attempt at persuasion?
Oh, yes. Psy-op is psychological manipulation covertly done.
But I mean, some people do that to get a wife.
Yes. Yes, you do that to get your kids to be nice or something, or to do their chores. Or some of you.
Right.
But art is, like when I was to get you into her world, is such a play on psychological tools to get you primed to feel certain things. So she's manipulating your psychology and your intellect to get you to feel what she wants you to feel.
And
that's
how
what
do
all
we
great
differentiate good from bad in that area?
Well, that's where, are they encouraging you to be your best? Are they bringing out feelings of love or being inspired? Like, I haven't read Rand in several years, but I remember just diving through her books with an intense, and then I would break to go create paintings, and it was this cycle that was just so passionate and rewarding and exciting to be living it, and then to be reading about it and solving mental problems, or solving issues, not mental problems like being sick psychologically, but solving philosophical problems, and seeing psychological insights in her work just gave me a green light to follow through, to watch people carefully, and to keep creating. And like postmodern stuff, Marcel Duchamp's toilet will get you to the urinal. Will just get you to start thinking how to be clever and take things down.
Well, they would argue they're trying to make people better by helping you see your internalized bigotry, or whatever the system. And so they would say, well, we're using psy-op, but we're doing it for a good cause.
Well, that's what they say, but the truth is they're doing it to set you back.
I know that, but I'm trying to draw some, like, if what you're doing is trying to, like create a reality that doesn't exist, or, just trying to draw some sort of broader principle so we can differentiate our psy-op from their psy-op. Or should that not matter? Should we just be trying to use the tactics that,
You have to look at it from a principled perspective. And is the purpose of what you're doing good or bad for the individual, or for the group, or whoever's being affected by the actions? And this comes up in the article I sent you guys. You mentioned it before, Michael. It was this article in the Wall Street Journal called "Woke Ideologies Are Taking Over American Art Museums" by
Right.
Eric Gibson. And one of the things that he talks about in that article is a crisis of purpose. And he says that in the art museums are now, this is a quote, the art museums are now widely seen as shameful relics of the era of Western colonialism, whose proper social role is to advance a progressive agenda. So we have a choice here. Do we want to have the purpose of art museums? Should it be to, just display the art in its proper historical context, or should it put forth this progressive agenda in the modern context or the woke context? And yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting is that it's all kind of propaganda. So, and to address your question, it could be used for the good or it can be used for the bad. So like Italy celebrating their Renaissance artists is propaganda that that's the height of human civilization, Renaissance art. And so it becomes a kind of nationalistic pride. And it's used to be an influence to support Italians in their own identity, but then it's also used as a marketing tool to the rest of the world that Italy's got the goods on what the sublime is. And it was, 15th century,
Yeah.
several hundred years ago. What we have now, the United States is using postmodernism as their propaganda, but it doesn't have, there's no good messaging behind it at all, where it's disintegration, rage, psychological rage, incompetence.
Isn't the message in college? I was taught that the message of this postmodern stuff is that what we have now is bad, and so we need to destroy it and just rebuild from scratch. So in essence, they're going back to the dark ages or even caveman days, where they're just like throwing stuff up on the wall and flinging their poop around, and the primitive sort of expressions of the self.
Right. But again, it's talking point is somehow they're doing something good. And that's where a lot of them, the postmodernists, just don't have any balls to face what it is that they're actually doing, that they're out to destroy the human mind.
Yeah, it's like they're out to destroy all of Western civilization, every little bit of progress ever made.
Yeah, but they're also out to destroy how anything healthy in a human being. So they'll destroy the lives of their kids, they'll destroy their co-workers, they'll destroy everything as far as psychologically, not showing a window towards flourishing. But then they justify it that you have to be negative to tear down whatever.
Right, our past biases or.
Yeah,
but that is what's going on. And that's, I think to some extent, having that view and with a kind of zealotry. We don't want the zealotry, but we do want the psy-op, and to at least be able, it's just part of basic, to the extent it's part of basic persuasion and sales, we need to have something to show people the benefits of capitalism on even an emotional level.
Right. Well, I find it's hard to, well, actually, I have a feeling that capitalism to me is an unfortunate term.
That's fair. I mean, just moving away
freedom,
from centralization
freedom,
at this point.
What I meant is capital, like it's all financial, instead of some kind of political thing that identifies freedom.
Yeah. It used to be classical liberal, but then the liberals took that.
Right.
Do you think it's a mistake to use that term? Like, should Rand have adopted a different political or economic principle?
Well, no, then you have to just redefine everything. And so it's problematic that way too. So sometimes you just have to take the word and just run with it. And
Because, yeah, you can change the nature of the meanings of words over time, and they're not set in stone, because we use them to mean things. But if the origin of the word is incompatible with what you want it to mean, that's a tough sell. You can't say that egoism is you can't change that word to mean altruism, or focusing on other people, because
right.
ego has a root that means the self. So,
Well, if you look at the landscape, the social media landscape, and the conservative sites like Truth Social over there, they're all clueless about the meaning of art. So even people like Dan Bongino on his website has a separate section for the cultural wars, but it doesn't mention culture. I mean, it might be about some like Kim Kardashian doing something political, but it's not about what's going on in the museums. It's not about the arts. It's not about the lifestyle of what I see as culture. And so it's interesting, so that he may be a capitalist and he's acting true to the definition of capitalism, which has nothing to do as such with the arts or with psychology or any of those elements. And that's what I find when I look at the conservatives. They seem to be on the other side of the spectrum, kind of anti-art.
Yeah, I
And then,
think part of what happens though is that it's like when you see the talk show hosts get liberal, for example, it's like, well, I'm just not going to watch that anymore. And when you see that the arts are considered to be liberal, and they shouldn't paint with such a broad brush, obviously, but it's just a type of a rebelling against what they see as this woke takeover of the culture.
yeah, but then they don't have, like that critic who wrote that piece in the Wall Street Journal. He thinks that Richard Sierra, the abstract guy with the bronze walls, and that Matisse are great artists. And to me, they don't even register a blimp. By looking at art as an integrated philosophical, technical, sensory experience.
it's interesting though how someone like that could come up with the identification of a crisis of purpose, and seemingly come down on the side of treating art museums as just places to appreciate art and not push forth this political agenda.
Well, it's it's hard. Like my take on evolution through art, where I talk about art as a psy-op and all those elements, and then I lead to contemporary artists who are wonderful contemporary artists who are doing innovative things. That art critic, that man doesn't have that vision. And so he's kind of a status quo. He kind of reminds me of the people that wear the bow ties.
Yeah.
Like the libertarian conservatives that wear bow ties.
I think that was Tucker Carlson.
But it's kind of a mishmash of conservative thinking and traditional values like 4th of July, hot dogs and fireworks.
Maybe he's seeing something in people like Matisse that he relates to on a personal level, and isn't really contrasting it with the great artists, or it's more personal for him, maybe.
Well, I'm not sure because it seemed to me that he writes from a place, because I researched the guy after I read the article. I went looking where he publishes and all that stuff. It seems that he's kind of following the right-wing status quo, and that a museum should be having old masterpieces like Renaissance art. And then, but anyway,
So it's okay. It's good because it's old, or it's like part of the Renaissance era. Is that his
well,
view?
when you look at an art history book, a typical art history book, they have all these Renaissance period and the French Impressionists, and then they go into the modern era and they share modern stuff, and it usually cuts off at Marcel Duchamp. And that guy seemed to have, he was like a status quo of an art history book.
Okay.
So like he was promoting that, but I don't think he knows the reasons behind the different movements or the aesthetics behind what's the difference between modernism and the French Impressionists or the Renaissance painters. I think he just takes it for granted that, oh, they were good and they were good, and these modern guys like Jackson Pollock are good. And but if I was talking to him personally, it would end up as a dead end because I would be asking him for more information than he has.
Well, we'll put the article up for people to take a look and see that. Can we talk a little bit about your upcoming book?
Sure.
Tell us what can we expect?
Well, talking about life lessons, in doing a book, I think doing a book is 95% all the technical stuff, formatting, the text,
Right.
grammar, being copy edited, make sure the chapter titles are in the right location on the right page. Well, especially maybe for an art book, because you put a lot of the pictures in and it's difficult to get them to line up well. But it seems that 5% is the concept.
Okay.
And the rest of the work is just constructing this, a beautiful file that will print well. Because I've been laughing at that. Like, I just figured out how to to include the chapter headings in the header.
Okay.
So you keep the header, the chapter title in mind when you're in that section. And I thought that was a really nice thing to do, but it's problematic to do that in Microsoft Word. But it will look really nice when it's done. But the book is after 9/11, I started writing art tutorials. So I've been doing online art tutorials for about 23 years, and 22 years. And I knocked them all together to do the book. But then I have now 4 books behind me, and I have 20 years of experience. And so I rewrote all of them. And a lot of them were like, well, let's get a more inspiring image, to show in the book. And so going online and getting high resolution images of things. But it covers, it's in 3 sections. The axiomatic concepts, the fundamentals, that with those fundamentals you can go anywhere. And in the visual arts, as well as seeing visually, form, light, and space are your fundamental things that complement each other. So form, to see a form, you need light to see the form, you need light on the object. And to have a form have a 3D shape, you need spatial depth. So spatial depth, form, and light all work together to empower each other. And so they're axiomatic. So I discussed that. And then I discuss the middle section is on essentials that you must have, like 1-point perspective and how to make a really good composition. And then the third section is mind-blowing techniques, like a painting. Let's say you're doing a vase in a still life, and you have a glass and a vase on a tabletop. The glass and the vase are your objects. The space in between the glass and the vase are your negative space. So you have the key objects, and then, so think of like planets. You have the moon and you have Earth, and then you have the space in between. So the moon and the Earth are objects, and the space is the negative space between them. Well, great painters, Picasso does this, mostly Rembrandt, is he warps the negative space and he turns it into a shape.
Okay.
So it's not just air. It's not just whatever, like the background. It's actually warped to shift in shape from the edge of the one object to the edge of the other object. It's like pulling a curtain between the two objects. And so that's really super, super advanced. And
Yeah.
I discussed that in the last part. And the one other thing.
Sorry to interrupt, but does a negative space and shaping it, is there some science behind how that affects human perception?
Well, I know I'm developing it as far as visual art.
Like, does it reach an emotional level? When even if you're not aware of this technique as a viewer, do you think that it's affecting the viewer in an emotional way, or he's getting something out of it?
Yes, it instead of it being a void, and instead of it being flat, it's like a path through the painting. It makes your eye feel like it's moving through the painting.
I see. It's more integrated.
So it's like you have, it's like you're skiing down a slope, and you have, I don't know what they call them, the pylons. No, what do they call those things? The skiers ski between? Well, let's say you're skiing between trees. So you have one tree close to you on the right, and you have one tree further away from you on the left. Our depth perception can tell that there's an empty space, that there's space between those two. We know that the one tree is the back. And in art, this manipulating and warping the negative space makes that tangible, that spatial difference tangible. And it makes you feel like you are skiing through them. You're moving through them.
Oh,
it's
like a guide for your eyes.
And it's a total manipulation of 2D space.
Yeah.
So 2D space, your flat space is just flat. But this is a tool to give it more three-dimensional illusion that feels real. So it feels like instead of the painting just being a flat object, it feels like you could move through it. And that sense of moving creates an emotional experience in your body. So literally, you feel like you're moving, and then that triggers an emotional thing. And it's also psychologically pulling you into the space. So like when I talked about Rand using her techniques and her skill and her genius to pull you into her novel, into the work, this is one of the techniques that artists could use to pull viewers into their paintings. But I don't know anyone else discussing it other than me.
That's great. Are you still doing lessons at all?
I have a couple of students. I'll do a workshop, but mostly I'm constant. The books are my legacy and sharing my knowledge. And once it's in a book form, it's out in the world. I've created it. It's there. It's there for posterity, and that I knew what I was doing, and trying to make it so that it's really helpful for budding artists, to give them the knowledge that I didn't have when I was learning in my 20s. Do you have any questions about that, about the book? Because I want to discuss my show coming up.
Well, please do. Let's hear about it.
Go.
So in about 3 weeks, I have a show at the Figure Ground Gallery in Seattle, Washington, on the 1st of June.
Okay.
It's an evening show, and it's called Exploration: The Freedom to Go Anywhere. And that's the idea of the beginning of my book, where I talk about form, light, and space. When you have those tools, as an artist, you can go anywhere your imagination takes you. You can try anything, you can do anything, and there's a chance that you will be successful at some point in pulling it together. And most artists, what they do is they emulate a style, or they repeat their own style, where they become a caricature of themselves. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like an actor who made success in one way and they never change.
Right.
And then you have artists who make
There's a money motive. There's a money motive there, right? Usually they're trying to repeat the success they had before so they can get more money.
So they just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Or someone can be known for their female nudes and that's all they do. Or they can be known for landscapes and that's all they do. And I think it's because they don't have those fundamentals solidly in place. So with those so what happens is if you don't have the fundamentals, you pick up on a style and you repeat it. And for some reason it works, but they don't know the reason why it works. And so they'd have to keep repeating the same argument or the same problem over and over and over again. And they usually stick with the same colors that they tried and true, traditional, all those things. But if you have the fundamentals that are axiomatic, you can break with tradition. You don't have to repeat yourself. You can try new things. You can switch perspectives. You can do a million different things. And that show that I'm having is about my range as an artist, going from line drawings to sketches, to pastels, to color theory, to the human body, how it communicates, body language, to a masterpiece. I have one of my major paintings there, Danae. It's the big Swedish girl in my studio.
Yeah.
That painting will be there. I have the tattoo series where it's an art within the art. So a person with tattoos is the artwork. They're the canvas, and then I painted that. So it's a painting of a painting in a way. My exploration, and I have the glass vase series in charcoal, where it's
Are you trying to show that the right principles apply across different approaches to art?
Yeah, all of those have the same foundations, but they're all different kinds of things of exploring, but they all have the form, light, and space.
That's great. And it's very, go ahead.
Yes. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's very Randian what you were saying about how, if you have the right principles and you go at it, you should expect to find success.
Yes, yes. And I also, I also got that from Jim Collins. I think he wrote in the 80s and the 90s, Good to Great books. He did a whole
Okay.
series, but they were all for business. But he had this concept that if you have good people on the bus, you can drive the bus anywhere you want.
Yeah.
And if you have a jerk on the bus, they sabotage everything. So you kick the jerk off. And I didn't quite know how to use it, but this shows an example of using that with form, light, and the good people on the bus, the good ones on the bus, you can drive the bus anywhere you want. And so I hope that helps make sense of the show when people go from a charcoal sketch to a finished pastel to an oil painting sketch to a major painting, that it's extending the range really, really far.
Do you
So
think
that's
there's some?
coming up.
Do you think there are some mediums of art or painting that limit these principles of form, light, and space? Like if you're only using charcoal, is it harder to represent light?
No, even with a line drawing, you can, it takes some talent, but even with a line drawing, you can convey form and space and depth, and people will sense light, even if you haven't painted the light in there. So
I'm just
it's
thinking of like, why did it take this long to develop these principles? I'm thinking of like
because
those.
wait, because of this damn CIA.
Yeah,
They
CIA keeping.
destroyed knowledge in the arts from the 50s on. So they were all the artworks that they were promoting were this reductionist thing, like abstract painting, which doesn't teach people anything. And they're influenced by all the money and the push, the knowledge of composition and form and light and space and anatomy and how to draw and how to put things together and how color theory works, and all of those things were lost. They weren't taught in universities because the universities were taking their lead from what was going on in museums. And so I went to art school in the 70s, and they had nothing to teach me. I had one good art teacher that I loved, but that was outside of the, what I learned from him was outside of the school. But in my classes, it was postmodern. They didn't teach me anything. There was nothing to learn. And it was in, a fine art program at USC.
It's
And
probably been more explicit in that direction since.
oh, and Yale and Harvard, their art departments are disgusting. They're so pathetic and incompetent. There's no skill set there at all. It's all just political posturing.
Yeah.
So I worked really, really hard to develop all these tools. And now writing the books is my way of sharing that. And then I don't have the date yet, but I have plans to show 26 or 27 of my major life-size works.
Wow.
So,
This year?
This year, they're all like 4 feet wide to 5 feet wide.
Wow.
And tall, life-size figures. It's a major undertaking. No museum will touch me with a 10-foot pole. And I don't think any gallery can do it, because they may want to sell them, and the pricing is not going to be realistic for an average gallery or for a normal gallery. So I decided just to have the show myself, just put it on. No cocktails, no wine, no hors d'oeuvres, no entertainment, no music, just the paintings. And it'll probably be in a banquet hall in one of the resorts in Palm Springs. So that's what I'm looking at now. And it will
Sounds
be
amazing.
one night. There'll be, so if I do it in a banquet hall in a resort, I can book it in advance
Okay.
and
Yeah,
give
well,
people plenty of notice. So I can give them a 4-month notice or something like that. And Palm Springs is such a lovely place to visit. It's easy to fly into. There's no traffic. It's safe. Because normally this is the kind of show you would have in downtown LA, where you have to step on needles to get to the front door. And I'm not doing that. I can't make people go. I can't ask them to, I can't inspire them to come to a show in downtown LA. So,
well, maybe
Well,
if you painted needles, if you put needles in your paintings, then you would get displayed in museums. But
oh, most definitely. There's all kinds of things I could think about that would get displayed. But I don't want to spend my time, painting them because do you know that psychological thing where people are cynical as a joke?
I mean,
They think it's a joke, so they make really rude jokes, but they act like it's just a joke.
oh yeah, it's their form of humor, and they're trying to get you on board with their humor. Yeah, I don't like that either.
Right, really skewed things. I'm missing. I don't have an example right this second, but
I grew up
in a
Jewish.
way,
I thought it was Jewish humor.
so let's see. Oh, like if someone's proud of themselves and a friend says, they're proud of their accomplishment, and a friend comes along and says something really nasty about how they're a loser, but they make it as a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that if you keep doing that, it kind of ends up as Alzheimer's. As you get older, instead of you being clear-headed, you become that joke.
You've stopped thinking objectively, and you're in this permanent state of jokery. I don't know what it's called.
So like cartoon artists have that where they're making political fun of people and all that other stuff. But at some point, that becomes their worldview. So they started saying, well, I'm just going to be critical of other people and have like needles in my paintings.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is that you start painting the needles in the paintings, and then you start getting absorbed in it. And before you know it, you become the thing you paint.
Well, you get trapped in your success, right? If you do that and then you become successful, and then you're faced with a choice. Do you fess up and say I was just joking around, or do you go with it, and then that becomes your career? And now
Right.
you're living this fake life, this inauthentic existence where you're just a complete populist, and you're trying to please other people and not yourself.
Right. So that's the thing where I'll just make this compromise, or I'll just do this compromise for a couple of weeks or for this show, and it'll be popular, and then I'll paint what I really want to paint.
Yeah.
And they never get there.
It becomes who you are. Yeah.
It becomes who you are.
Well, tell us again your website where people can view some of your works.
MichaelNewberry.com.
Great.
Go there, and it has links to my available works. That's on another website. My archive, the 1,200 works, is on Instagram, and that's what is that? It's Newberry Art.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put up a link to your June 1st event, and let us know when you have a date for your one later this year, when the book is coming out. Maybe we'll bring you back on then.
And I want to do one sales pitch.
Sure.
Is that I have 4 books up on Amazon, and one is co-authored with Stephen Hicks. And I have my color theory book, and then I have my essays, Pandora's Box. I'm an independent artist, and I'm an independent author. So it's not published under someone else who's promoting me. And any review is really welcomed. So if you get the books and you've read it, put in a paragraph of saying whatever your take was on it or what you got from it is really, really helpful on Amazon.
Okay.
And I do that myself. I try to do that as much as I can.
For other, yeah.
Yeah, for other people. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, your insights, just everything you're doing. William, any final thoughts?
I just want to thank you, Michael, for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm not very good at art myself, but I am a consumer of art, and I love learning about the process and the techniques. So I'm looking very forward to your new book and reading that. And I hope to talk to you again when your book comes out. Maybe we can discuss it.
Well, thank you, William and Scott, and congratulations on all the work you do for this podcast.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We appreciate your support, and we'll look forward to having you back in the future. In the meantime, this has been the Ayn Rand Fan Club. I'm Scott Schiff along with William Swig, and we will see you next time.